Welcome to part 2 of Value Creation with AI. This series is aimed at executives to figure out how to actually produce business value and capture value with the new language models that have arrived on the earth. Today's session is going to be focused on getting a second set of eyes on the work that is being done within your business. And I have been devouring this book that's in healthcare, but it is really a great foundation for any line of business where the stakes are high risk use cases, and the cost of errors are potentially high, right? So the AI revolution in medicine, highly recommend this, even if you're not in medicine, to go through this book and use it as a capabilities map on what you can do. But for today's session, I'm going to talk about something that's called what I'm terming a second set of eyes. And I'll go to a use case that's in here in this book. Think about this. The new language models that have come out, if you use ChatGPT and especially GPT-4, it is not only human, but superhuman on many axes, right? So I know for many circumstances, GPT-4 is much, much smarter than me on almost every dimension, except for my very narrow area of excellence, I'll say. It is far smarter than me on many different things. And then it has this problem of it can hallucinate and it can say things confidently that are wrong, right? So how do you take this thing that has incredible value and put it into your business in a low risk way, but still get the benefits of that superhuman capability? And where I've come to for a lot of high risk use cases is using it as a second set of eyes on work that's already being done. I've been thinking about that a lot as a great way to get that, to lower the risk and maximize the reward from this technology. And I'll go into it just a case here, and I'm going to show some demos also that can bring this home on how you can integrate this. Now, the demos that I'm going to show, it's not about going to the ChatGPT, the tool, and using that. It's about how you'd actually integrate and automate these things within your particular business, right? So into your workflow systems, your current processes. So in this book, it has tons and tons of use cases. It's awesome. But in a medical context, I'll read this here. GPT-4 can support quality improvements. I've been tossing around, should I go with quality or effectiveness for this video? I'll get to that in a second. Indeed, quality isn't only about documentation. GPT-4 can provide feedback directly to the doctor to improve the effectiveness of future encounters. And what it does here, this was a section that was right after automating documentation generation. Here's the question that they prompted GPT-4 with. Can you please assess how I did in this encounter? Any tips for improvement? And then it talks about, based on the transcript and requests you provided, it appears that you did a thorough job in the encounter with Dave. Here are some areas in which you excelled. Gathering pertinent information. You asked relevant questions to gather information about Dave's symptoms, medical history, and current medications. Performing a physical examination. You performed a physical examination and explained your findings to Dave, on and on and on. And then it says here, overall, you demonstrated competence and professionalism in this encounter. One potential area for improvement is to consider providing written instructions or educational materials for Dave to take home to reinforce your verbal instructions and help him better understand and manage his health conditions. And it goes on from there. So if you can think about this, how much work is being done in corporate America, in the business world, that if you had the unlimited budget and resources, it would be ideal to have a QA process or quality process on top of that. Well, now you can, and you can do it at scale. You can integrate GPT-4. I always bring up GPT-4 in this context because it's the best model at this time. May 18th, 2023. I'm sure that there's going to be many other models, but right now it is kind of the default if you want to get the best intelligence that you can. How awesome would it be to integrate those things? So I'm going to go through some demos here, and I'm going to show you just some examples on how you potentially would use this concept in your business to integrate into your workflow tools. So I actually asked GPT-4 for some example documentation in both healthcare and legal and what personas I could use in the AI to pressure test these things. All right, so let me switch to the Azure OpenAI playground here. So, okay, so what we have here is we have the Azure OpenAI playground, and my point of showing these demos is to talk about capabilities, the second set of eyes for this video, right? Like an automated QA process to improve consistency and the quality of the work that your team is doing and the effectiveness. And it's also scalable, by the way. So once you can program this into a system, you can scale it, and the robot can be many hundreds of robots behind the scenes checking work, thousands of robots. My goal here in these videos is to show you, like, okay, that's great as a capability. How do I actually integrate that? And what I'm showing here is Azure's OpenAI Playground. The reason that we use that as a Microsoft solution provider is because it has all kind of compliance built into it. HIPAA compliance for our healthcare customers. It has other certifications that are all tied into Microsoft Azure. So if you wanted to integrate these capabilities into your business, you'd have some kind of system of record or workflow process system, or we help companies build out workflow process systems on legacy systems as well. You'd want to integrate these capabilities as a check, an automated check into the system and show the user the feedback, right? They can, of course, go over to ChatGPT and do these things, but then there's compliance issues and everything else. So your ideal is to take something like I'm going to show you here and integrate it automatically into your workflow processes. So here's a few examples. So I'm going to put in a patient summary report that ChatGPT generated for me for this video, and I'm going to give it a persona. It told me, okay, maybe a medical specialist persona. So what you can do for the AI is you can ascribe a persona onto the AI on what you want it to do. So I'm going to say here, and behind the scenes you could do this explicitly, to give, let's see here, to improve, let's see here. Okay, so I'm going to say it's a medical specialist to improve clarity, coherence, etc., blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to save that. That's called the system message. And then I'm going to say, can you please provide feedback on my medical summary report? Okay. Can you please provide feedback on, and I'm going to do legal after this as well, on my medical summary report, and I had ChatGPT generate a non-PHI report here that I can dump into this. And let me just quickly look at the prompt that they used in this book real quick, because I thought it was pretty good. Can you please assess how I did in this encounter? Any tips for improvement? So I'm going to say, I think that's, can you please provide feedback on my medical summary report and provide tips for improvement. Okay. Now, in a medical domain, you'd have a lot more information here. You'd have the patient record. You'd have a lot of notes that you can go through for the encounter. You'd have a lot more here. But my point here is that if you integrated a session into a tool like this, and let me see here, can I move this video so I can actually click on the send button? Okay, let's shut off the camera for a second here. All right, so I'm going to pop that in. Okay. Now it's telling me down here below, AI generated content might be incorrect. That's very, very useful as Microsoft is starting to put in these high risk use cases detecting this. Okay, so it's going through here. It's basically cleaned up the notes for this. So I could ask it more questions. If I had the patient profile here, I could ask, some of the things. What did I miss? What are some of those kind of things? I can get feedback there on the actual encounter. So this is super interesting, and if I thought about this, about like how would I integrate this into a process, right? So at the point that something like this was documented in the system, I'd imagine a secondary screen that would come up that would be the AI saying, here are some things that you did that are great, and here are some things that you might improve. And then if the user education needs to be there to know that the AI could be incorrect, right? So just as Microsoft is putting here that AI generated content may be incorrect, that would be a way to potentially give feedback to the user that, take this with a grain of salt. It is a colleague that is imperfect but can still provide value. All right, so let's do another use case here in legal. Now, if you've been following along with the breakthroughs of the language model technologies, there are a ton of companies that are getting massive funding in legal. The I/O of the legal profession is at least a lot of the work that I've done with lawyers in the past has been text-based. So it is an area that is definitely an area where there can be things that are optimized. So I'm going to change the persona here on this. I'm going to clear the chat, okay? And I'm going to ascribe a different persona in this sense of getting a second set of eyes on legal, right? So imagine a workflow system where there's a process where a client has a need. For the ChatGPT gave me here an excerpt from a service agreement. Okay, imagine the business process for a legal firm that's doing a service agreement. At some point, there is a document that is generated. If you could inject the AI into a workflow system where it's analyzing the output from the human and then giving them feedback at that point, that's the hypothesis here on a place to get a lot of value at low risk. So I'll put in here, I want to put in the persona as a legal contract review specialist. We'll just keep it simple for now. I'll pop that in there, and then I'm going to say, please review my service agreement and note things that I may have missed that could create liabilities or other adverse legal outcomes. Let's say, take this from the view it has here between. Take this from the view of XYZ Corporation. Okay, so actually what it gave me here is a legal review for XYZ Corporation or service agreement. So I'm going to pop this in. All right, so overall the service agreement appears to cover the essential elements, such as scope of services work. Okay, here, let's talk about what it could actually do here. Consider adding a confidentiality clause that requires ABC services to keep any sensitive proprietary information to receive confidential, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I only gave it a little bit of context here, right? So, of course, in a real setting, you'd have a lot more context that you'd provide the AI. But the big point is, how do you take this superhuman level of excellence that sometimes comes out of the AI, and then other times you get, nonsense or things that are hallucinations, and how do you inject this into your business to get value? The idea here is, as part of a workflow process, to have that second set of eyes look at this. I can think of so many different other use cases on this. I just wanted to scratch the surface with it. So let me know if these videos are valuable to you. If you're in business and you're not deep into the weeds like the rest of us technologists into the AI, the latest and greatest on these things, if these possibilities and capabilities make sense to you and help you imagine what you can do inside of your business. I'd love to hear your thoughts and how I can make these better and more useful for you. Thanks so much for your time, and let's change the world together.